And welcome everybody to episode 72 of Two Goalies, One Mic. I am Duane. For Cully couldn't be here tonight, had some coaching duties, but we are joined by producer Steve and the one, the only from Puck Soup Podcast, Greg Wyshinski. This is the only entrance I could think to give you, man.
You know it's all about.
Well, that's lovely. If I'm a little bit worn out, it's because I got home from Dynamite at Arthur Ashe Stadium at like 3 a.m. But it was awesome. And it was draining. That's the other thing, too. It's not simply like the time I got home. It was the amount of energy expended during a lot of people are saying 5 hours of wrestling. If you were there, you know it was only 4 because you spent an hour in the merch line. Either the merch line or the beer line before Dynamite started. So if you sat there for all 5 hours, it probably means that you didn't come home with a overpriced t-shirt, is my estimation.
That's what I hear. I saw your tweet earlier. It was like, a gauntlet match. Or I forget what your exact wording in the tweet. The
Iron Man match.
Iron Man match. Sorry. Yes. I apologize. Just to even get any type of merchandise from that event. But that must have been absolutely an unbelievable experience to be at, and we're going to get to that for sure. But the big news here today in Buffalo, obviously, was from Kevyn Adams at the press conference. Something we all expected. Jack Eichel to be stripped of the C. I don't think anybody really expects him to play for the Buffalo Sabres this season. But just a lot of other things too. I know there was some rumors about that the Sabres were going to cave and let him get the surgery that he wanted to get. Apparently that's not the case, Greg. And just your thoughts on that, because this has turned into, I don't think there's really any other way to say it. It's a shit show.
Clusterfuck.
There's a lot of other ways to
explain it. Unmitigated disaster.
I would be shocked if at this juncture they'd allow him to get the surgery that he wants. I wrote about the Kevyn Adams press conference in ESPN today, and I think the stripping of the captaincy is not only like a shot across the bow from management that we have ways of twisting the screws and making it uncomfortable for you, even if they have Jack's best intentions in mind at all times. But it was also a clear indication in a physical sense that this divorce is happening.
Yep.
And that it's bitter. Kevyn Adams was interesting today because he was asked point blank whether teams that he's negotiating with want Jack to have the surgery before they acquire him. And he wouldn't confirm it. He did confirm that the trade process has been complicated by Jack's injury status.
Yeah.
But he didn't confirm that there are suitors out there that are like, hey, get the surgery and we'll make the trade. If I'm the Sabres and I'm looking to get the maximum return for Jack Eichel that I can get, and B, try to convince Jack Eichel to get this other surgery, I'm probably putting it out there, oh yeah, the Boston Bruins say they'll trade for you if you get fusion surgery. You know what I mean? Like, to me, that's the thing you do if you're the Sabres. You'd be like, the thing you want, like in most in life, can happen. You just have to get off this artificial disc replacement bit, and then we can send you to where you want to go. But Adams was very sort of dodgy about it today. I was surprised by that.
Yeah, you know what? It's he also obviously, I think it's a foregone conclusion. I'm not sure which reporter said he wouldn't even commit to saying if Jack Eichel has played his last game in a Buffalo Sabres uniform. Which, I mean, come on. I mean, at this juncture, I heard on the radio today, from an inside source on WGR 550 that his stuff has been cleaned out and he hasn't had a locker there since that day. He made those comments back in May. which is again wild to me. Like, like it seems like all those rumors you heard last season or the prior season about that they were possibly looking to trade him back then, it's starting to look like those were true. Which back then I thought, are you crazy? You don't get guys like Jack Eichel every day. You don't luck into. I mean, you could say they didn't win the lottery, but they still got one hell of a consolation prize in Jack Eichel that year at the McDavid draft. And I could never. How many years ago that was? I would have never believed we would have gotten to this point.
All my friends in Buffalo are like, Wyshinski, don't go down that Connor McDavid road again. I've made more enemies amongst Sabres fans by being like, you guys just wanted McDavid. And they're like, no, we wanted one of the top 2 picks. Come on, let's be honest. I think the trade stuff with Eichel, though, as far as maybe like having shopped him before all the surgery nonsense, I mean, we have to factor in the idea that we heard that he was unhappy last summer, right? Well, 2 summers ago. Right. And so if there was that exploration, it could be because Jack necessitated it by being like out, not on the maybe be known inside the organization that of his discontent, and at the very least, you have to kind of explore that, lest you end up with a pre-trade Ryan O'Reilly, when he was sullen and complaining in the locker room. Post-trade Ryan O'Reilly is a whole different conversation as far as like what that meant for the Sabres. But the thing about the surgery bit was that there was always this, notion, whether it was accurate or not, that Jack saw this as a way to really make a break from the organization. Now, that's not to say that the injury isn't legit. It's not to say that his desire to get replacement disc surgery isn't legit. I mean, especially when you see the differences between what his life will be after he's done playing with that surgery versus with fusion surgery. But there's no question that if you were going to kind of game plan this out for what would be the way for Jack to pull the chute and escape Buffalo, a dispute over the best course of treatment for his own body, to me, would be like, I don't want to say an easier sell, but maybe a more justifiable escape plan than simply, I'm tired of losing, which again is justifiable. But in this case, it's very justifiable to be like, I have an injury and they're not letting me treat it the way that I want to treat it.
And you're not wrong there, man. And what blows my mind, Greg, is the fact that this was even an option for teams in the CBA. Like, I looked at, and we looked in the NFL CBA. There's a lot of consulting that has to take place when you have an injury and you want to, the direction you take with the surgery you get. But at the end of the day, it's the player's decision, essentially a player's decision over their own body and what course of action they decide to take. And the fact that the NHL Players Association allowed them to lose this type of decision for the players themselves, that's mind-blowing to me. That's just like insane.
Yeah, I mean, and it goes back to a lot of the disputes that we have in this league where players are unhappy about XYZ, and it's like, well, if your union was stronger or more on point or willing to make the necessary sacrifices to get the things that you guys want, then you wouldn't be in this pickle. The salary cap, escrow, like it all comes back to, are you willing to go to battle with the NHL and know what the cost of that battle will end up being, which is that potentially another canceled season or two, to get what you really want. So yeah, it surprised me too. I think like a lot of people have gotten a real education on the medical processes of players since the Eichel thing happened. But again, the tough one for me, and I'm a players guy, and I think that the notion of this surgery being experimental is a little bit overstated by the medical community. I mean, it's been done on athletes in other contact sports. It just hasn't been done for an NHL player yet. I do think it's tough though when there is an alternative. When there's a time-tested alternative that's safe, that will extend his playing career, that undoubtedly has more complications later in life than this other surgery. But it's not as if, he's asking for a Ferrari and they're like, well, how about this 87 Geo? There are two good options on the table. It's just that Jack believes there's one that's significantly more beneficial to him than the other.
Correct. And like we mentioned earlier, Steve, I know you were talking about this, is that this guy wants to be able to pick up his kids when he's 4 years old. He wants to be able to do coach pitch in baseball with his kids, and there's a life after hockey. And I think one of the biggest points to be made here, and I know, Steve, I know me and you talked about it, was that the Olympics are this year. And
I know.
If there's anything about Jack Eichel, is that he takes a ton of pride in wearing that jersey. And you have to believe, even though it wasn't announced, till about a month ago that they were going to return to the Olympics, that had to be in the back of Jack's mind at the start of all this back in May, that, if I go down this road and I butt heads with the team, there's a chance that, this could leak over into my opportunity to play in the Olympics. And there's no sure thing that in 8 years, there's going to be another opportunity for Jack Eichel. We all remember how upset Alex Ovechkin was 4 years ago, or how many years ago it was, when he wanted to be, represent Russia. And he was even threatening to go over there anyway, even though it wasn't supposed to be allowed. So, to sit there and say, and I know there's a small contingent of Sabres fans who think this was a ploy to get out of Buffalo. Well, I think this should put that all to rest. He failed the physical, and now his opportunity to play for Team USA may all be lost. And that just goes to show how strongly he feels about getting this procedure, the disc replacement.
Yeah, and so, all due respect to the Sabres, I don't give a shit about you guys when it comes to Team USA. This was our shot, man. This is our shot. We were gonna go to Beijing with Austin Matthews and Jack Eichel up the middle. We were gonna have two franchise centers up the gut for the first time, maybe in my lifetime, as an American. I mean, maybe you go back to I don't know. Maybe you had Madonna and Roenick on the same team at one point. I'd have to go back and check that out. But my God, we finally had a shot. Now, granted, Canada's maybe we play McDavid with Sidney Crosby. I get it. They're real good. But, we would have had the thing that we've lacked forever on this team. And, again, Jack's injury is probably going to short-circuit that opportunity to really bring a competitive team that, might be better than playing Finland for the bronze this time to Beijing. Yeah,
and, it just, it just goes to show, in the mindset I was before that press conference in May, as I looked at the Sabres roster, I looked at, the one thing we've lacked since the day we lost both Briere and Drury, which is another conversation. It's another dark day in Buffalo history. You lose those two guys in the same day. This is the first time we looked solid down the middle. You had Sam Reinhart playing so well at center in Jack's absence. You have Jack. You have Dylan Cousins and Casey Middlestat, swap in as maybe your third or fourth line center, or a guy who can just, fill in from here to there. It's so hard to sustain success in this league if you don't have depth down the middle. And we finally had it. And then Jack Eichel gets on that Zoom call and shits all over it. Sam Reinhart shits all over it. It's just same thing with the Olympics. It's just you have your opportunity to have possibly as good, if not better, depth down the middle than Team Canada. And sorry, guys, too bad. Buffalo's going to ruin that too. Unbelievable.
Right. And then you come back to the reality of the situation, which is that you trade those two guys, and whatever Eichel brings back, he brings back. But then you hit the reset button, basically. There are obviously pieces on the roster that you can feel good about, like Dahlin and Cousins and guys like that. But at the end of the day, it's kind of you're sailing in a new direction. You're no longer Team Eichel, which is what you've been since the draft. And that's really frustrating. It takes a while for that to reconfigure. You look at a team like Ottawa, for example, that saw this mass exodus of talent over the last 5 years of guys. I mean, they're starting to piece it together, but by no means do I think that they've, put it together. And by no means is there anybody on that roster as good as Erik Karlsson, for example, when he was in his prime, or Mark Stone. All due respect to Brady Tkachuk. So it takes a while, and to think about having to not only say goodbye to a franchise player that you may never get that caliber of talent again within the next decade, but to then have to kind of just throw the puzzle pieces on the floor and, and see what kind of picture it can make is incredible. It's just so frustrating. But then again, like, that's one of the reasons Jack wants to leave. This is like, he's been in like 3 different rebuilds in his career. How is that possible? Temporally, how is that possible?
Since Terry and Kim Pegula have bought this team, 6 head coaches and 4 general managers in just over 10 years. That's insanity. How can you expect to have success at any level and any sport when you have that kind of turnover in those 2 positions? And then the O'Reilly trade, obviously, and other players that have been, that have left the organization, and then the guys that stuck around for longer than they should have. I mean, how do you justify telling this guy, don't worry, we're going to get it right. We're finally going to get it right this time, Jack. And
there's no level of trust there. I mean,
there isn't
at all. And especially when you think about the one guy that he respected in the organization, although he turned out not to be a very good coach, was Ralph Krueger. And then you throw him out the door, and Jack's like, all right, who's my guy now? I mean, I think he's got a good relationship with Granato from what I hear, but at the end of the day, it's just like, how many times do you have to hit the reset button for this guy before he's like, I need to go someplace else? Yeah. But it's a shame. I mean, it's a real shame. I think when I was at that draft with McDavid and Eichel, despite the fact that they didn't get McDavid, there was still a sense of, okay, this is the thing now. This is the direction we're going in. We've got a guy to build around, and it just never came to fruition.
No, it didn't, man. And it's it's just like there are all these hopes you had, when you brought him in, and you kind of luckily won the Dahlin, draft, and then you have your 2 pieces, right? Your franchise center, your franchise defenseman. You kind of look at the blueprints that teams in the past have drawn up, like Chicago and LA. Chicago, with Duncan Keith, and you have Jonathan Toews. LA back then with Doughty and Kopitar. Down in Tampa Bay, the team, a team that is looking to make it 3 in a row this season. And how they built, that team with Stamkos, Hedman, and Kucherov. Like, you had the blueprint there. You were on your way to making the right decisions. And I think the real issue here is at the very top. You have a person in Kim Pegula who runs this team who has no experience in running a hockey team, but just refuses to allow hockey people to make hockey decisions. Now, Kevyn Adams, I feel like I do get the, when it comes to the football side of things, the Brandon Bean vibes a little bit, trying to build a culture. But that guy also had no experience when you brought him in. He's a first-time GM. He's never been an assistant GM. And 3 years ago, he was coaching the Academy of Hockey down at the Harbor Center. So how am I supposed to trust you to do this job right?
Yeah. But the teams you mentioned also had something else, like you were just getting at, which is it had Dean Lombardi and Daryl Sutter. And it had, Steve Yzerman, and then Julien Brisebois, and then John Cooper, on the bench. And it's when you are swapping out GMs and coaches with the regularity that the Sabres have, it's not a recipe for success. It's throwing everything you can at the wall and seeing what sticks.
That's exactly. It's like throwing darts at a board and just hope you get a good score. I know we don't have you for much longer, Greg, and I appreciate you coming on with us. But one last thing I wanted to pick your brain on is we all know that you attended AEW Dynamite last week at Arthur Ashe Arena, and you got possibly to see the match of the year, Kenny Omega and Bryan Danielson, formerly Daniel Bryan, and just between that. The Malachi Black match with Cody Rhodes, just that whole event, the CM Punk promo, it was just absolutely unbelievable. And, I know we've said this a lot, and people have been saying this a lot over the last couple months. What a time to be a wrestling fan. Before you answer, I want to just change into my wrestling attire.
All right, nice.
All right, and I wore this jersey. I bought this jersey specifically for you yesterday because of your pinned tweet.
Brilliant.
Store.
I've often said that if the Devils adopted a black jersey with a devil face on it and signed Shatan and gave him number 6, they would have been able to pay for every player contract for a decade with the money they would have made.
Oh my God. You're not wrong.
It was insanely fun. Like the energy level, as probably people who watch it at home know, it was off the charts. And it was off the charts not only for Dynamite, but then they taped Rampage that'll be on Friday after it. And the remarkable thing was just how much how much juice that crowd had to like go through, not only like I said, the hours of wrestling that were happening, but like the amount of cheering and reaction that was necessary. And man, it was fun. And I've heard people like complain that the Kenny and Daniel Bryan match shouldn't have been first. I'll say this about that. Like, one, it kept it interesting because you didn't know if they were going to do the time limit draw. If you do it at the end of the show and you look at your watch, it's like a half an hour left. You're like, oh, of course. Yeah. And then two, like, you want Daniel Bryan, you want Bryan Danielson's debut to feel epic. And if you put it at the start of a show in that place with that crowd, it was just going to be 30 minutes of absolute chaos, and that's what it ended up being. Man, I like everybody. I grew up a WWF fan. I was a WWF fan even through the Monday Night Wars.
Yep. Loyalty.
But shit, man, like AEW has gotten me more into wrestling than anything else has in decades. Like, it's just so fun and so true to itself, and you feel that the wrestlers and the performers have ownership of what they're doing, and it's there's a certain, ice cream for dinner aspect of some of the things they do. I mean, I was just telling my friend last night at Dynamite, like, everybody who we wanted to see win kind of won for the most part, outside of a few things, but that's fine. If you, it doesn't always have to be subversion. It can sometimes just be a good story that gets you to the desirable end. And the most amazing thing about it right now is that we were at Dynamite trying to figure out when the matches were going to happen. And like one of us was like, well, they got to open with this match. They'll open with Cody. They'll open with Kenny, and maybe they'll open with Darby and Sting. And the point of it is that every match on that card could have opened it, and every match on that card could have closed it.
Oh, yeah.
And for that to be a 2-hour television show in the year of our Lord 2021, and those are your options, like, you're doing something right. And it's a joy to be a fan of that organization, WWE, for certain things at this point. But like, I'm juiced up as a wrestling fan again in a way that I haven't been in a long time, and it's because of AEW.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. Steve, did you want?
Two things. One of the matchups that hasn't really been like teased yet, but will inevitably happen, is likely MJF doing Cody Rhodes' previous shtick in present day times. Those two need to butt heads, and it's going to be absolutely glorious. But something else I wanted to ask about, since you actually got to see it live, how did the Butcher look? A Buffalo-based wrestler, also the guitarist, and Every Time I Die. I have to tune in on Friday night to see that match. I haven't been able to see him in a long time.
He's awesome. He's slimmed down. He still does that weird goose step walk through the ring. Butcher and Blade are great. And no, it was super fun. And Rampage was super fun. That tag match is super great. And I don't know. That's part of the fun thing about being an AEW fan, is that there's a certain amount of, like, if you've been watching since the beginning, since like Butcher and Blade were, wrestling, and you're just like, who are they? And who's this girl with the rabbit ears? Yeah. There's a certain aspect of being a fan of the band when they're playing small clubs and, making albums in their garage. And then they get a record contract, and instead of it being something real shitty, it ends up being Appetite for Destruction. Like, that's how it feels right now. It's like, it feels like
a go-go.
Yeah, it feels like they earned this moment by being so good on such a small stage, that now that they're on a big stage and, have been, have a rocket strapped to them because of the buzz that Punk and Danielson have given them, they're not fucking up. They're not like all up their own ass. They're very much still true to what they are and who they are. They still have a 6'8" guy in a dinosaur mask wrestling. Like, that's beautiful. If you're trying to go legit, you might not have the wrestling dinosaur. You know what I mean? So, like, I don't know. It's a joyful experience, and it was a joyful experience to be at Arthur Ashe. I mean,
Yeah.
a hot New York crowd for any sporting event. I was just at that very stadium for the U.S. Open, which again, like if no one's ever been, you got to go because tennis, but in New York is just a hell of an experience. Just like
it's gonna be wild.
We turned
trying to catch the bus in New York is. but
like it was just a real joy to be around people that were just there to have a good time and just celebrate this new different thing that's made all of us really really happy as fans.
I think it could best be embodied in the look when you see CM Punk cut a promo, because it's like you can see the joy, right? You can hear the joy, you can see it, and that's what he's always talked about over the years and its hiatus. It's like he wanted that joy of professional wrestling back. And I was like you, dude. I was team WWF through the Monday Night Wars. I was loyal, and at the beginning of AEW, I first got onto the Elite. My uncle introduced me to those videos. I remember, and you've probably seen them, the Southpaw Wrestling videos.
Oh yeah,
some of the funniest shit you'll ever see.
Yeah,
and he initially after that we watched the Elites, the Be Elite show, and I'm like, who are these guys? I'm like, are you kidding me? How are these guys not in WWE? Like, and I just started to follow them. I started buying this. I started buying the swag. I got the Cleaner Omega shirt, the American Nightmare back Bullet Club, when Jericho first came over to AEW, the Bucks of Jericho shirts. I have like over 100 t-shirts in my closet right now. I'm afraid to show any female what's going on in my closet. I'm immediately out the door. She's like, "Are you kidding me? That's 90% of your wardrobe?" Yeah, it is, and I'm not embarrassed.
Well, the good news is that it's become, at least for this moment, we're in a socially acceptable to be a wrestling fan cycle.
Yep.
So there's always a down cycle. There's always a down cycle. It'll happen again. It ebbs and flows. But I don't know if we're necessarily at a Rock hosting SNL stage, but we're definitely in a MJF was on the local television station in New York and keeping kayfabe stage. In one of Jericho's books too, I'll let you go right after this, is one of Jericho's books he wrote. He said he talked about his early years with WCW and WWF. It's like he refused to break kayfabe anywhere he went, and he told the story about he was in an elevator and there was this kid who recognized him, and he was a heel at the time, and he's like trying to ask him for an autograph, Mr. Jericho, an autograph, and he refused to even look at him. He refused to look at him. He's like mean mugging, refused to look at the kid. The kid's dad is like, "Dude, are you serious?" He's like, "Yeah, man, that's what it was all about for those guys, because they're playing a part. They're this is pre-internet era where now everything's ruined by the internet. There's no more shock and awe, and I hate that about wrestling now. It's like you can't really keep have that shock and awe factor that we had back in the Monday Night Wars. It sucks, and I hope WWE can figure that out. There's rumors that they're getting ready to lose Kevin Owens, which I think is a huge mistake. Kevin Owens is the best man on
AEW.
You could already see the effect that AEW's had on the competition. And a rising tide, what's the phrase? High tide rises all boats, or whatever the hell it's called. It'll happen. And they're already responding to the competition, and they need competition because they grew very, atrophied, complacent. So,
well, I heard NXT is already getting ready to go to TV 14, which I think is a huge, a very good thing. Not that we're going to get MJF promos in Cincinnati with Pillman's family. That was unbelievable, by the way.
The entire city of Cincinnati, mid. Dude, that was
when he got in his grandmother's face. It was unbelievable. I'm sure you saw the pictures of MJF's parents in the crowd with the sign.
Yeah,
we think he sucks too. Fuck you, mom. But Greg, thanks for hopping on. I'm sorry we kept you a bit later. But
hey, no worries.
Carried over with the wrestling talk sometimes.
Yep.
Steve Bennett, want me to say hello to you.
Tell him I said hi. A true pioneer.
Yeah, it's a 24-inch podcast. It's an unbelievable. I don't know if you've checked it out yet. Another really huge mark. Obviously based around Hogan, but I've enjoyed listening to it. He talks about all his old stories, going to shows with his dad back in the Hogan, Roddy Piper era, Andre the Giant, just all the great experiences he had, and he goes through all. It's a really kind of like a historical index of just how great wrestling was back in the day with all those superstars. So definitely check it out, guys. If you have the 24-inch podcast, on all your podcasting platforms. Unbelievable stuff. I don't know if you've checked it out yet, or Greg, but I suggest you do.
I have not. I will.
Definitely check it out. And thanks again for joining us, man. I appreciate it.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody. That was Greg Wyshinski from ESPN Puck Soup. Absolute beaut, Steve. Absolute beaut.
Yeah. I mean, it's when you asked me to co-host this episode, I kind of lost my mind earlier.
Yeah.
I was just, because for so long I've just been listening to Puck Soup at work just to kind of like calibrate my brain while doing whatever office job I've been doing for years now.
Yep.
So it's just kind of like, one of those like low-key legends in my mind. So it's just, so I didn't have a lot to say because I don't like, what do you say? Like, what do you ask a guy like that? But we didn't get any time to talk about it. But the only like feather in my cap as a wrestling fan was I was actually in the stadium that night in Albany, New York, when Stone Cold drove the beer truck and drenched the corporation. Like, obviously, I was like 8 years old, so obviously, like, it was one of my first memories, but like, it was one of the best things ever. And at this point, when we watch AEW, anytime that the Young Bucks have a match, I used to watch Pro Wrestling Guerrilla back in college with like a hyper like indie wrestling nerd old roommate, and every time they would get on, I would just, because I hated them, I hate the Young Bucks, and I send them a video every single time I see them now in AEW when they have an actual match. I just send them that same reaction, even though I love the bit now. Like, I used to just hate heels. I never was just like, they're so good at being a heel that I respect it and I love it. I was just like, oh, fuck these nerds. I hate these.
That's the point of a heel, man, is they it's their job to make you hate them. Like, I like the, like, here's the thing. What in regards, I got into this debate with somebody and a couple friends, and I said, Conor McGregor is the perfect heel. And they're like, well, they disagree with me. He's like, no, he is. He goes, well, if Conor McGregor had his choice, he would probably be loved by everyone. Like, that's great. But his actions don't say that. And everybody loves to hate Conor McGregor. The guy, he talks a lot of shit, and he gets a lot of hate. The guy tried to fight Machine Gun Kelly on a red carpet at the MTV Video Music Awards. Took a swing at him, and then right after an interview after that, he denied taking a swing. It's like, no, I wouldn't hit a white rapper, a Vanilla Ice wannabe or whatever he said. It's just like but that's the thing, is he's good at making you hate him, and that's why he's a good heel. It's the same thing with the Joker. The Joker is possibly the most famous, whatever how you want to put it, villain of all time, and people love him. Well, it's your job to hate him, and he gains infamy from that, and that's what the job of a heel is. It's your job to hate them, and I think that's guys like MJF. They're not a dime a dozen. Guys who have the ability to, make you boo them, flip them off. Like Roddy Piper, before obviously the age of internet, he used to get people used to try and stab him or something on the way to the ring. But he played the heel perfectly, man, and it's unbelievable. This age of wrestling we're in right now. I tune into AEW. I was stubborn about it too. I was very, very, very stubborn. But I love wrestling, and I love the promos they do in AEW, and I gave in. I was like, I'm elite now. I'm all elite now, yeah. And I love every second of it.
Yeah, I mean, that same hyper nerd friend pitched AEW to me because I just kept seeing it like pop in and out of my feed as time went on, and it was just like, oh, there's a whole other wrestling league. Okay, cool. And I was like, so like I know he's been in the know. He never dropped off. Like, he's been like a lifer, and he's like, yeah, it's basically just Pro Wrestling Guerrilla if they had like actual money to use. I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And then like I caught a few episodes here and there. And I'm like, all right, that was pretty good. That was pretty good. And then I caught that most recent pay-per-view, and I was like, okay, I'm fucking hooked.
You're in. You're in. I'm in.
I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I don't give a shit. Let's go.
Let's go. Yeah, it's a great time, and like Greg said,
shut up and take my money.
Yeah, it has affected WWE because Big E would have never cashed in on a non-pay-per-view if it wasn't for AEW and the ratings war that they're going through right now. So they would have never done the crossover match, the Bloodline and the New Day this past week. The other night on Raw, that would have never happened if it wasn't for AEW. So it's been a lot of fun, man, and a lot more fun than being a Sabres fan, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, CM Punk doesn't make me want to cry multiple times a year.
No, he doesn't.
Only when he says he's retiring, or just step it away for a minute and then just stays gone for longer than I want him to.
Yeah. It's well, and again with the Sabres, we'll see what happens here, man. Doesn't look like Jack Eichel's getting traded anytime soon.
I mean, he's definitely not getting traded. It's at this point, it's painfully clear he's not getting traded until either fusion surgery or his experimental MMA, like what is it, like a disc replacement surgery, or it's like a kind of like a fake implant kind of thing.
Yeah,
I forget which one it is, but again, like I never understood why everyone was so apprehensive, because the people who have gotten this surgery successfully are people who get kicked in the head for a living.
Yep, Chris Weidman fought
exactly. So like to that end, I think he would hopefully be okay, because those dudes don't wear helmets when they get kicked in the face. Jack will be wearing a helmet, and he would ideally have Brett Murray there to fight somebody for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a perfect world.
Yeah, I guess they don't even read the room. I mean, I always feel bad for the social media people with the Sabres, and it's like, you think about it, and then they tweet this out today during that press conference, or that template. It said 100% on it earlier, but it's you're just giving ammunition to this Twitter fan base that's going to absolutely drag you all season long.
But we can't officially endorse using that. So if you're watching right now, definitely do not use that template for any nefarious or downplaying reasons. Don't be negative or disparaging towards a struggling franchise. Whatever you do, definitely don't put the hashtag Where's Kim in there, or We Are All Duane. Definitely don't do anything of the sort. This is our official public service announcement. Use it for good.
Use it for good.
Just to say something nice, like Rachel's Mediterranean, mid.
And you want to know what?
Mid.
But coming off the shit show that is the Sabres, obviously it was announced, I think earlier today, that the NHL's investigation hasn't found any wrongdoing on the part of Evander Kane into the allegations of betting on his own game. Which I guess is a good thing for Evander Kane. And then, simultaneously you see these allegations from his ex-wife or soon-to-be ex-wife of, sexual assault that make you want to throw up in your mouth. And I believe it was reported that he will not be reporting to training camp as a mutual decision between both he and the team. Personally, just get him out of the NHL. If you ask me, like, if all this stuff is true, it's a pretty damning look. And if you're going to sit here and you already have some bad stuff going on in Chicago with Bradley Aldrich and the allegations against him, and that have proven to be true, in my opinion, at least, what transpired after he left the organization and when he was arrested and jailed for almost a year for sexually assaulting a 17-year-old kid. You can't have both these things, staring you in the face, both that and the Evander Kane thing. So, if this is all true, you just need to ban him from hockey altogether. Just get him out of the league.
Yeah, I definitely can't condone anything like that. I do remember the episode of Puck Soup, actually, where they talked about the allegation that Evander Kane was like throwing games to win bets. And the argument in favor that he wasn't doing that was, as far as being an athlete, he was having a career year.
Yes.
So if he personally is throwing the game, that's absurd. So at least to that, I can speak to, he's probably not throwing games and betting on his own team to win or to lose.
Yeah.
Probably not. But to everything else, that kind of just makes him a morally contemptible human being. Yeah,
Unless he was picking specific games, I doubt it.
This is the same league where teams that lead their division can lose games to a Zamboni driver who works for them.
It is true.
Or a league where the worst team in the league can consistently lose 5-2 no matter who they're playing.
Yeah. But I there's plenty more to talk about, but we were on a hiatus there for a little bit, for about a month, and it was good to get away from things. And now we're back and rolling. We have some future guests, Buttes players. We are gonna continue our Buttes coverage this year. EJ Raddick has agreed to come on with us at some point. That'll be exciting. Rob Ray, at some point in the future, he'll be on with us again. Just give a long list of guests that have agreed to come on, that I cannot wait to, talk to, and maybe not talk about the Sabres, because it's going to be, we need to find a second team to root for, I think, this year.
Yeah, it's called the Rochester Americans.
Yes, that's true. Or the Michigan Wolverines.
Or the Michigan Wolverines. Now that's a team and a half.
Yep, that's a team that's going to contend for a national title. Also, I've gotten confirmation to do a dual episode with both Eric Portillo and Noah West, their new freshman goaltender. So that'll be a fun time. I'm excited for that. And maybe we'll try and get Stevie Shields on for that one too. Just do a big interview. So with some Michigan alumni and current players. So, but with that being said, Steve, thanks for filling in, man. Producer Steve, everybody. Absolute beaut. And I'm excited for this season, sort of, kind of.
Yeah, I just definitely want to see how it all unfolds. And I think it's kind of like the same thing that was happening right at the tail end of the 18-game losing streak last year. Like, the stakes have never been lower. No one is expecting anything while this, cluster fudge of the Jack Eichel situation slowly untangles itself and, unclogs that metaphorical toilet until eventually we can just flush the turd down the drain, just get it over with, stop looking at it. The stakes have never been lower. So I'm just looking to see what people just, I guess, unencumbered by all of that, I guess just like a clean slate, clean locker room. Donnie's in charge. This is what we're doing. Let's just have fun out there. And maybe there'll be a few nights where we're pleasantly surprised. There's going to be plenty of nights where it's like, yeah, that's basically what would happen when we play insert team here. I'm not surprised. It hurts, but I went into this thinking it was going to hurt. But every so often, we're, just get the glimpses and, hey, that was a much smarter play than you would have made this time last year. I like that. That's good. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for not doing that thing that you did every game last year. I love it.
Yeah. And I'll get to a few games this season too. Definitely.
I just moved here. I have to get to a game. Yeah. I've been watching Sabres games from Philadelphia for the past 7 years of my life.
That's your fault.
I want to finally be in a room with people that are all as upset as I am for the same reason. It's not just me.
I know.
It's like therapy. It's cheaper.
Yep. With that being said, guys, thanks again to our sponsors, 26 Shirts and Outlet Liquor, the place to buy a case. Don't haste. I'll add on to it. Don't haste. Go to the place to buy a case. Outlet Liquor. Thanks again to our sponsors, and thanks again to Greg for coming on with us, and most notably, thank you to producer Steve for doing all that you do, buddy, and stopping in on short notice for Cully. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
With that being said, this has been episode 72 of Two Goalies, One Mic. We will talk to you soon.